I never thought my life would end up this way. 5 years ago, I stood at the altar with the man I loved, believing we'd share laughter, joy, and maybe even a few gray hairs down the line. But what I didn't expect was to spend the best years of my life pushing a wheelchair, cleaning up after accidents, feeding someone like a child, and losing myself in the process. I loved James with everything I had, and I gave him every piece of me. But love has a funny way of twisting into something unrecognizable when it's not reciprocated. James and I met in college. He was the kind of guy everyone noticed. Athletic, confident, the star quarterback who somehow managed to ace his economics classes too. I was just the girl from the library, always buried in books. I never thought he'd notice me. But he did. One day, he asked me about a book I was reading, and from there, it snowballed into late-night study sessions, coffee dates, and eventually, a proposal under the stars after graduation. We got married 2 years later. Life was perfect. He got a job at a finance firm, and I taught literature at the local community college. We had plans: buy a house, travel the world, maybe have 2 kids and a dog. But one rainy afternoon shattered it all. James had gone out to grab groceries. He never made it back home walking. They said it was a drunk driver. Hit his car from the side at full speed. His spine snapped. The doctor's words played on loop in my mind like a broken record. Spinal cord injury, T4 level, permanent paralysis from the chest down. I remember sitting there numb, gripping the edge of the hospital chair, wondering how in the world we would make it through this. But I didn't hesitate. I told him I would be there. I promised I would take care of him. And I meant it. For the first year, it was all about learning. Physical therapy appointments, managing catheters, medications, diets, wheelchair modifications, home renovations. I learned to lift his weight, shift his position every 2 hours, and handle the depression that crept into our home like a dark shadow dot at first. He was grateful. He'd whisper thank you as I tucked him in, hold my hand with the little strength he had left, and cry when he thought I wasn't looking. But over time, something changed. The gratefulness faded. The kindness disappeared. And the man I married turned into someone I barely recognized. He became demanding, cold, critical. It started small. Complaints about how I folded his shirts, or how I overcooked his eggs. Then it grew into tantrums, silent treatments, and passive-aggressive comments. I kept telling myself it was the frustration. That being paralyzed was changing him. That this wasn't really James. But every day, a little more of me cracked under the pressure. I quit my job to care for him full-time. Our friends stopped visiting. My parents advised me to hire help, but James refused. He said, "Why pay for what you can do?" We ran through our savings quickly, and soon I was budgeting grocery bills down to the last cent. I wore the same clothes for years, canceled every personal appointment, and forgot what self-care even looked like. I was a ghost in my own home, but I endured it, because I believed in vows, in loyalty, in being the woman who stood by her man through sickness and health. Then came the day that broke everything. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen and was walking down the hallway to his room. The door was slightly open. I heard him laughing, which was rare. So I slowed my steps and peeked through the crack. He was on the phone with his brother. "She still wipes me, feeds me, and handles everything," he said with a chuckle. "It's like having a free servant." Can you believe it? I froze. His brother laughed on the other end. "Man, you really hit the jackpot, right?" James said. "She's so naive. I don't even have to ask. She just does it all like a good little nurse. No salary, no break, just guilt and loyalty fueling her." I backed away slowly, pressing my hand against my mouth to keep from gasping. My heart pounded so loudly I thought they'd hear it. My legs shook. My hands trembled. I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and sank to the floor. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there numb, remembering the years I had poured into this man. The countless nights I stayed awake, massaging his legs, reading to him, cooking his favorite meals, praying for his comfort. And all this time, he saw me as nothing more than a free servant. The betrayal wasn't in the words, it was in the tone, the laughter, the pride, as if my love and sacrifice were jokes to be shared. I sat on that cold tile for hours, rethinking every choice. Every moment I chose him over myself. That night, I went through the motions like usual. I fed him dinner. I helped him change. I tucked him into bed. He didn't know what I had heard, and I didn't tell him. Not yet. I needed a plan. I needed to reclaim my life. The next morning, I called my friend Maya. We hadn't spoken in a year, but she answered on the first ring. Within minutes, I was sobbing on the phone, telling her everything. She listened quietly and then said the words I hadn't allowed myself to believe until then. "You don't deserve this." She helped me research caregivers. We found a state program that offered assistance for disabled individuals. Something James could have applied for years ago, but didn't, because he liked having control. I set up a consultation behind his back. I also called a lawyer to understand my rights. Everything I did was quiet, calculated, and slow. Because I needed to do it right. 2 weeks later, the caregiver arrived. James was furious. "What is this?" I didn't ask for help. I smiled. I did. Her name is Carla. She's licensed, experienced, and should be here daily from now on. He tried to argue, but I didn't raise my voice. I simply handed him a folder filled with papers I'd gathered information about assistance programs, our savings, the lawyer's contact. Then I said, "You said I was a free servant. You said I was naive. Well, consider this my resignation." He looked stunned, like he couldn't believe I was standing up to him. He shouted, cursed, even cried. But I didn't waver. I moved into the guest room. I started applying for teaching positions again. I reconnected with old friends. I even went to therapy. Weeks turned into months. I rebuilt myself. I got hired at a school across town. I started jogging in the mornings. I took a weekend trip by myself. I wore dresses again. I laughed again. And slowly, I became someone I liked. James, on the other hand, had to adjust to Carla. She was efficient, but she wasn't me. She didn't entertain his tantrums or stroke his ego. She did her job and went home. One day she told me, "He talks about you all the time. Says he never realized what he had." But by then, it didn't matter. One afternoon, he asked me to sit with him. He looked tired, smaller somehow, defeated. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was angry and scared. I took it out on you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." I nodded but didn't say anything. "I loved you," he continued. "Maybe I still do. But I understand if you can't stand me now." I looked him in the eye and said, "I loved you too. I gave you everything, and you broke me. Forgiveness isn't easy, but I'm working on it, for me." He wiped his eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't go back to being his wife in the old sense. I became a visitor in his life, not a prisoner. I checked in, made sure he was okay, but I no longer revolved around him. My orbit was my own. Eventually, I started dating again. Tentatively at first. I met a man named Elliot at a book fair. Kind, gentle, understanding. He never rushed me, never pressured. Just listened and offered companionship. We took things slow, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. James heard about it eventually. He didn't say much, just nodded quietly when I mentioned Elliot. Perhaps he finally understood what he had lost. 5 years of my life were consumed by caregiving, by emotional neglect, by invisible wounds. But I came out the other side stronger, wiser, and free. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes loyalty can become a cage. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who doesn't see your worth. Don't regret loving James, but I do regret staying silent for so long. My story isn't unique. Many women sacrifice themselves for love, for vows, for promises made in better times. But I hope someone out there hears my story and realizes that it's okay to choose yourself, because being a free servant is not love. Love is mutual. Love is respect. Love is seeing the person in front of you as a partner, not a tool. And now, as I sip my coffee on the balcony of my small apartment, watching the sunset, I know I'm finally living for me. The past no longer defines me, and the future is mine to write.